as a poker player, you learn to sort of disassociate money from sort of your real day-to-day expenses. And maybe it comes back to bankroll management, but not just managing the bankroll, but having a separate bankroll or like a separate mindset.
Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff. Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi.
Welcome to episode 58 of Two Bored Apes. I'm your host, Jamie. I'm here with Zeneca. He's my friend. He's my co-host. His webcam looks bad right now. How are you?
Your webcam looks bad right now.
No, that's not true.
I'm well.
Wait, does it actually to you or no? Because
Well,
yours
it
looks
does, but
blurry to
that's-
me. Oh, you just have a bad connection?
Potentially, or you have a bad connection. This is terrible. This is a terrible way to start a podcast. Vitor is going to blow your head off on the side over there.
I'm also
Twitter Q&A
trimming-
episode.
I'm also trimming my fingernails, which is really not good to do on a podcast. Okay, let's jump into the questions.
Twitter Q&A. We got a bunch of questions. We tweeted out, and we're going to jump right into them. You wanna go with the
Question
first
number one. Tetiawali. That's maybe how you pronounce that. Probably not. They asked, how can NFT projects / brands do a better job at onboarding new market entrants into Web3? I think one of the easiest ways is to basically take the crypto part of it out, like the way Reddit is doing with their avatars.
Mhm.
When people can buy this stuff with a credit card, it's so much easier than having to have them set up a self-custody wallet. All that is, I don't want to say needlessly complex, but too complex for most people who are casually interested to get into it, you know?
100%. Like my response to this question would be like, just look at what Reddit did. And like that is, they did a phenomenal job at onboarding new people into the space and, you know, do things like change the wording away from NFT, use digital avatar, digital collectible, just because NFT has this massively negative connotation. And it's just a technical phrase like fungible. Most people have no idea what fungible means.
Yeah, that's been a big topic of discussion on Twitter lately is the difference in that. But there is something also to like the argument that, well, not all NFTs are digital collectibles. So you have to be kind of wary of just slapping that label on any NFT because it's not particularly accurate sometimes.
Yeah.
Although, you know, obviously the other end of the spectrum is NFT is so vague. It means any, right? It's anything that's traded cryptographically that's not a regular old token.
Well, it doesn't even have to be cryptographic. Like this coffee is that a token?
No, it's not a token. It's not a token. It has to be a token to be an NFT. I promise.
Anyway, what
else though? Is there anything else?
There's the basic things like just do better at having like educational material, like when like a good FAQ, good easy to understand language. When people are like, all right, so I'm interested in getting an NFT, how do I start? And then, you know, you can do things like have a credit card payment option, but also like just answer the questions like, what does fungible mean? What is a blockchain? I think every company website should have like their own spin on educational material. Just answer the basic questions at least.
Yeah, I think there's also something so we've talked before about how there's so much sameness in the NFT space where the projects are kind of doing the same thing. But I think, you know, new participants that can bring in just a different value proposition of some sort to the equation. You're going to be able to attract people who weren't interested in the stuff that NFTs offered before, but are interested in whatever this new value proposition is. So in some sense, you know, because again, you know, NFTs is such a vague, varied term that can describe almost anything. Mm-hmm. You know, if you have one that does some new thing or offers some new value or experience, you know, you can onboard people that want that.
Yeah. I mean, this also goes to just the whole idea of like solving real problems. People always say, oh, well, what's the point of crypto and NFTs? They're just like, they're not making things easier, they're just making things harder. And in many instances that's true, where like just the Web 2 version of something is just way better. But as and when we get to instances where it's faster, it's cheaper, it's just more seamless to use crypto, NFT, blockchain technology, I think we'll see just a flood of adoption there. So anything that you can do to sort of help speed things up and make it as frictionless as possible. And this comes back to credit card and everything, but just solve real problems as well.
Your video, by the way, is completely frozen to me now.
It's fine, Jamie. It uploads locally. It's gonna be fine.
Okay, this is still steaming. I don't know how hot I got my water. Somehow I got it hotter than boil it.
It does look like a hot mug of Joe. Is it?
It's also not good, which is a bummer too. All right, I think we did a pretty good job answering that one.
I think we did. Next question. Imaginary Storm asks, what do you think about the application meta? How would you improve it? Personally, I think it is a step in the right direction. And this is still Imaginary Storm speaking. I'm not responding. Personally, I think it's a step in the right direction compared to the grind meta, but it still needs some adjustments. Are you familiar with the application meta?
No, I don't. I can make guesses and infer, but I don't think they're accurate. I mean, I guess the grind meta, well, I'll just let you tell me.
Yeah, well, basically for the last couple of months, ever since I think Utes List really, DGods, Utes, I don't know how familiar you are with that. You're pretty far removed from like the whole PFP avatar space these days.
Yeah, I am at this point, but I'm on Twitter enough to still be vaguely aware of all of it.
Yeah, so they basically popularized the idea of having people fill out an application in order to sort of hand select the people that are allowed to go on the allow list. So we've gone through various metas. It used to be like a wild free-for-all gas war where people would just show up on day of mint and then pump the gas. And then we went to like allow lists where people said, okay, now in order to mint, you have to be in the allow list. And it could be as simple as just like being in a Discord server early. And then people like started to get more elaborate where it was like, all right, you need to be in a Discord server, but you also need to draw a unique piece of art and then hike a mountain and then you get a tattoo on top and then, tweet 1,000 times and retweet. And, became this whole thing. In order to get an allow list, you had to do all these tasks and people sort of started to hate that. And now we're seeing this application meta where it's, you don't need to do all these tasks, just fill out an application, which is in and of itself a bit of a task. But, and then the project would go through, look through the applications and sort of hand select the people that they would like to be in their community effectively and add them to the list. What are your thoughts on the whole concept?
Okay, so I was right about the grind meta part. I didn't really get the application meta thing because I was sort of thinking of the concept of like an app or whatever, platform. I think there's, I like the idea that people can kind of do whatever they want with their NFT projects and find what they think works for them. So I think there's sort of pros and cons to all of this, right? Like the application idea is, it feels like it's a little bit against sort of the permissionless nature of crypto in that you're sort of asking for permission from the creators of the project to get into it. But if the project is intended to sort of be a curated community, then okay, that's what that project is. And, the decentralized nature of the space means that, hopefully that project isn't so necessary to doing anything super important in the space that if people aren't part of it, you can just go around it. You can do your own things, right? So that's sort of a thing that I think when people complain about, individual projects being centralized, it's like you just go around it because they're not some forced bottleneck that you have to go through in the way that, like, for instance, if you want a phone application, basically, you have to go through Google or you have to go through Apple, right? They have a whole market, and that's just the way it is. If you want to advertise on the internet, you have to go through Google or you have to go through Facebook, that kind of thing. And so I feel like it's okay to have things that are, in some sense, a little bit against the ethos of the crypto space, because the overall ecosystem still allows people to just, you don't have to take part in their thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's also, this gets us down.
The grinding was stupid, right? Sorry to just step over you right when you started, but people, nobody liked it. You would have like fake traction in the Discords and all of this stuff. And then the second people got their things, they would like flip them and get out, and the community would just collapse because it was all built on lies. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It was good for like, I would say a few weeks where people like weren't yet burned by it and there weren't too many projects doing it. And so it like felt like something like a real sense of accomplishment. If you sort of spent a bit of time in Discord, you chatted and they were like, oh, you've been an active member of the community, we're going to, grant you an allow list. But then very quickly it just became, people would just set up bots or just grind spam chat. Anyway, I'm a fan of the application meta. Actually, the 333
You did it
Club
for that was what
was
my
an
first thought when you were
application.
explaining it, is that you did it with
Yeah,
333.
basically did it. The thing I didn't do was like the marketing genius, really, the move that Utes and other projects are doing now, where it's like, you do it, but then you publicly announce when people are selected, and it's just sort of makes them feel nice, and maybe like it does well at like advertising and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a fan of it. I think that we are maybe sort of trending to the point where people are getting a little sick of it again as well, where it's depending on the type of application. If you require people to spend half an hour to an hour to fill out an application, well, we're just right back to the grind meta again, where if they want to apply for a bunch of projects, that's many hours just filling out forms that no one really loves. And yeah, so I think there's a balance, but I think it makes a lot of sense. In some ways, it also, yeah, to your point about the permissionless nature, there's a bit of a contrast or like butting of heads there. But I think if once you buy the NFT, then it's like it's a free open market. You own the NFT, you can do whatever you want with it. At that point, it's out there. It sort of like allows for that permissionless nature to an extent to breed afterwards. But we're seeing all sorts of models. We're seeing, I think Valhalla is doing a 3-month lockup period. So basically, certain people that are on their like pre-sale list, if you get there, you can buy NFTs. They're NFTs at a certain price, but they're like locked for trading for 3 months or something like that, which is an interesting innovation or iteration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
Anyway,
lot
I'm
of
a
that
fan.
stuff
We're going to
is
do something similar for the upcoming PFP project for Zen Academy. Yeah.
a lot of that stuff is funny, like the locking periods where it's like we're trying to incentivize people to not sell, so we're just like not going to let you sell. And it sort of reminds me of like in a weird way, like minimum wage, where it's going like we're giving you the lowest amount that we're legally allowed to pay you. Is there some way that those connected, or did my brain make something up? How do those things connect in my brain then?
Minimum wage in the application meta.
Well, I'm initially thinking about the way that you're sort of trying to incentivize people to not sell, but then, you have this lockup period and you're just massively incentivizing selling at that one
Mm-hmm.
thing. You know what I mean? Like the way that you want a thing to be done, but rather than incentivizing it, you're forcing it. You know what I mean?
To me, it's more like vesting and lockup schedules for like seed investments or investing in a company, where it's very common to have like a 1-year lockup and then a 4-year vesting, where you can sort of, just to avoid basically institutional investors dumping immediately on retail, where you give the market time to sort of settle and find a price and all that kind of stuff, and then it
Right.
just slowly unlocks. And
That's
to me, it's
identical though. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, which I think I think it makes sense and it works, and I think I mean
well,
the
but
idea
there is
of
a big difference, right, between an inside investor and an NFT purchaser, right? Because then we're getting again to the point where we're acting like these are equity investments, which we
yeah,
know that they are not.
they are not.
They're collectibles, and part of collectibles is flipping them.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do, like, there's also, the other stuff that people have tried where like, we're going to boot you out of the Discord if you list below this
Yeah,
price, like
I hate
all of
that.
that stuff where you're trying to influence the market to not sell your stuff. But not by making it a desirable thing to own, just by going like, you can't do that, I think is generally the wrong way to, I mean, that's not how squiggles became valuable or something. You know what I mean?
Oh, they went on a run.
None of the stuff that has ever succeeded in NFT space succeeded because of those kind of weird
Yeah,
anti-free market selling type rules.
sounds accurate. Sounds accurate. I can't wait till we record later and get to art blocks.
Talk about our
Anyway,
blocks.
next question. I think you're up.
Ferncliff says, how long have you been playing and what is your Dota rank? Dota is a
Dota
MOBA.
is a video game. This is not NFT related.
No, but it's funny also to say Dota is a MOBA, as if people would know what a MOBA is and not Dota.
Yeah.
It's a type of game,
MOBA,
right?
massively online battleground arena or something like that.
But then it's not that massive, right? I don't multiplayer online.
Multiplayer online.
It's a
I'm
5
thinking
versus 5
MMORPG.
game with a lot of different characters you can
Yeah.
select. Well, I don't know what the point of explaining this is, but it's a fun game with a lot of strategic complexity. And
Yeah.
it also, you have to be quick. So there's like a technical thing to it.
I have
And
no
you're
idea
quite
what my
good at
rank
it,
is.
and I'm not good at it. Is that fair to say?
That is very accurate. Well, I'm also not
You're
good.
good.
You're just way worse than me.
Right. And I make sure that when we play together, you're playing against people that aren't as good as you. So you look good by comparison, but if you were to play against properly good people, you would no longer look so impressive.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I'm getting forced to play with people that are better than me. So,
So you look terrible.
How good you are and how bad I am get exaggerated by the fact that we played together.
How long have you been playing? Did you play in the Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne days?
I did not. So I think actually the first Dota I ever played, I was in your condo in Sydney when you were like still grinding Supernova Elite, and you'd like pass out for 3 hours, and I'd like play this new game Dota that you had on your computer. So I don't know what year that was. That was a long time ago at this point.
2008
8 years maybe or something. 12 years according to that.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it would have been 10, but yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's been it's probably been like the game that I've played the second most for most of the time. Like for instance, Hearthstone, I was playing a lot more than it for a while. These days I'm playing chess more than it, but it's kind of been a nice secondary or tertiary game that I've played all that time.
Yeah. For me, it's like the number one game I've basically played and gone back to over the last like 18 years. I think I started in high school playing Dota All-Stars as like the... We're very off topic, but I've been playing for a very long time.
That's what the question is, right? This is on topic to the question.
I've been playing for about 18 years.
I remember I used to queue up occasionally when it was a use map settings in Warcraft 3 or StarCraft 2. And I would just get, I would have to download the map, and that would let them know, boot this guy, do not let him play. He doesn't even have the map yet. And so I never ended up getting to play it.
Yeah. I mean, I've just been going on and off. Like I would go and play other games for a while. I played Hearthstone, I played StarCraft, I played all sorts of stuff. But it always keeps coming back to Dota. Civilization, Civ 6 is, what a great game. Twilight Struggle, what a great game. How good are games, Jamie? Games are pretty good.
Games are great. I love them so much.
Games are great.
Big fan.
Anyway, I've been playing for like 18 years. I have no idea what my rank is. I play Turbo now just for time reasons and fun reasons. So
it's quicker. Turbo's quicker.
It's quicker.
Hey, here's a question that's off topic. When you first had PCs in your home growing up, did they have a turbo button on though?
I don't think so.
Ours had a button right near like the power button basically, and it said turbo, and it would literally just make the computer go quicker. I don't know if it was overclocking the CPU or what the point was, but like, you would like the one thing that I would do is you play solitaire, right? And then the cards would all bounce out. Did you ever beat solitaire? You hit turbo, they would go out like normal speed. You hit it again, and they would be going very slowly. It's so weird that the computer just had a button like, go shitty slow or like go at a reasonable pace.
We never had that I can recall.
This was an old 486. We probably have some smarter.
Before my time. You're ancient. You're like, I don't know, what do you mean?
I'm
60s,
3 years
70s?
older than you. We're both ancient at this point, unfortunately.
I know. All right, next question.
Jack GK. Oh, yeah, it's your turn.
I think it's mine. Jack GK says, will finding a way to enforce royalties through a contract level be good or bad for the space, or the projects that decide to do so? Also, GM Jack.
GM.
Royalties is a huge, massive topic that, warrants an entire podcast basically, but basically, I believe they're asking is will it be a good thing if we can figure out a way to enforce them on chain? I
would just say yes.
Yeah,
because if you want to talk about like how the free market decides all of that stuff, then the projects that want to cater to that can just make a absurdly low one or no one. It all it allows is for the creators of the project's intentions to actually be carried through by the community. And so I think that can basically only be good. The downside theoretically, right, is people make too high of one, they're greedy, but then
Mm.
the market just doesn't do it unless the project for some reason is so good that they do it, in which case then that was the correct royalty for them to pick.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, no,
not
I
even
agree.
into the free market in general, but in this sense, it seems like a clear indicator that, allowing this is fine. And if the people choose the wrong royalty, then a competitor can come along and do otherwise.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it would be amazing. I think like basically all of the problems and issues that people are talking about now would be solved if we could enforce
Right.
them at the contract level.
It's a
That the
big
whole
if, right? Because
yeah,
the
yeah,
smart technical people seem to indicate that it's an intractable problem, but I think
yeah. It's yeah. It's basically uh yeah. The difficulty is that you can't have royalties on secondary sales without also having royalties on transferring from like your own wallet to another one of your own wallets, or like moving from your wallet to your vault, and that sort of begins to yeah, whatever. It's
it hampers the ability for the NFC to actually be moved or whatever. And for instance, used in like DeFi protocols like NFTFi, right? Every time
mm-hmm,
somebody makes a loan there, the NFT gets moved to NFTFi's contract. And so if you have this basically function that would make a royalty be needed every time an NFT moves, which is sort of how we think that you would be able to enforce the royalties, you would need it for all these transfers of the NFTs that aren't actually sales. And so then you'd have to sort of, I don't know, lie to the contract and say this was a 0F sale, but then all of a sudden you can start doing that for the legitimate sales and have the actual financial transaction happen in a different transaction.
yeah. How does NFTFi make money? Do they get a
They
percentage of
basic
defaults?
they take a defaults, you said?
Mm.
No, they take a very, very small percent of the interest in all the repaid loans. Very
Ah,
small.
okay. Cool.
Yeah. All right. The next question comes from Stephen Miller. They say, what do you think is going to have the biggest impact on identity in Web3? I like this question, by the way. Domain/handles like ENS domains, profile pictures, or federally issued NFT IDs? I think this is an interesting multi-layered question, and I'm going to let you start off answering it while I
It
sip
is a big
some
question.
passable coffee.
The question is, what do you think is going to have the biggest impact on identity in Web3? I think, I mean, yeah, there's multiple layers to it. There's personal, individual, sort of more private identity, and then there's the whole public facing identity. And I think that probably like I think we'll have, whether it's federally issued NFT IDs, I think we're going to have like passports on chain basically to verify that like we're KYC'd, we're a real human being, we're not a bot, we're us. And I think that will have a huge impact on infinity things as we go forward. But I think in terms of like, that's not so public facing. I think PFPs is obviously where all the attention is right now, and like a lot of the attention is right now, and that's what most people think of when they think of like NFT identity. Is like, oh, PFP. I don't know. Like, it's a tough question. I think people will occasionally change their PFPs, but maybe they stick with their ENS domain, and that's like Zeneca.eth. Like when I've had my ape for so long, but I'm probably going to change. Well, I'm definitely going to change when we do like our Zen Academy or PFP, and then maybe in 10 years' time we do a different PFP, or there's another one. I'm like, well, I'm going to change that, but the Zeneca name will probably be one that I stick through. So through that lens, it makes like ENS is probably the strongest identity. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's sort of a very individual thing because, like, for instance, this person is asking, one of the things specifically is about profile pictures, right? And to me, a lot of that is sort of about the community that you identify most with. And that's not necessarily your individual identity, but also for some people, it very much is. If you think about like, for instance, I can't speak really to Australians or whatever, but there's some people that are in some branches of the U.S. military, for instance, and the fact that you are a Marine is just a huge part of your personality. It's a huge part of how you identify and how other people identify you. It could be a sports fan too. If you're a fanatical sports fan, this person is a huge Celtics fan, and like that's one of the things you think about. So in that sense, you look at like these profile picture type communities, and if that's a huge part of you, then it is. But if there's, you can also have, like you're sort of saying, for you, you have the ape, and it's related to how people identify you. But now that you've got Zen Academy and you have this sort of personality on Twitter and stuff, that's sort of more how people are identifying you, and the profile picture is a little bit ancillary in that sense. So this is almost kind of a like lame hippie answer, but it sort of just depends on what people want to identify with, right? That there's going to be lots of options, and perception and reality is another thing where maybe you sort of want to identify this one way, right? But people still see past that. Like, who's the Wolf of Wall Street guy, right? He's just a famous scammer. And then he decided
Jordan
to come
Belfort?
he came into the NFT space a little bit last year. And it's like, he can kind of try and co-opt the communities here and go, I'm one of you guys. But it's like, most of us are still going, no, you're that famous scammer guy, right? And so I think it's just going to be, the same way that people have sort of done all of this kind of thing before, but in a digitally and crypto native way, to have different groups that you're associated with and different names that you're known for and all of that stuff. It's just, I think it'll be quite individual. Now, the government thing is a little bit of a different curveball, because then you're talking about something that's in some sense less a choice, right? It's a forced thing, but it almost sounds like, like, is your driver's license the biggest impact on your Web 2 or real life identity? Not really. And it seems to me that for the most part, that kind of thing will be a little more in that vein rather than the social media type personality that people are projecting to the world.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. Something I've been thinking a lot about as well is as AI gets better and better, and as we get these deep fakes, and like we saw that podcast with Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs, and like we're going to see just a flood of really convincing videos and audio files from like celebrities and politicians and people in the coming years. It's going to be increasingly important, incredibly important for people to be able to verify and authenticate which one is like the real human
Legitimate
being behind it and which one was not. And I think blockchain technology really comes into play there, where each individual can have like their own personal signature that they can be like, okay, yes, this was me. And anything that doesn't have their signature or this NFT ID perhaps associated to it is not by me.
Suspect,
it's like there's no
right.
provenance. Yeah, suspect is probably a good word. Yeah.
Speaking of which, have you seen the new Twitter AI thing? I wanted
Yes,
to use
I
you
saw
for it.
Briefly this morning, Andrew Wang, I think, did like 15 tweets of sort of like influencers and high profile accounts, and he's like, "Can you pick which one was you?" And I had a guess for which one was me, but yeah, it's pretty interesting.
I just saw a bunch of people doing like 15 basically of their own, right? And I wanted to use yours because I wanted to just see how lame and inspirational or whatever the AI saw your tweets would be. This is how I did such and such. Here's a thread.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And mine just complaining about how terrible the police in the United States are.
Yeah. It seems cool though. Like,
here's another question on sort of the same topic. What do you think about these people that are kind of trying to push the non-ENS things that basically are attempting to solve the same problem that ENS is? Like, I haven't looked into any of them deep enough, but I wonder if we're all, like there is obviously sort of the network effects, right? Where something doesn't necessarily have to be better than the other thing. If enough people have already coalesced around it, it becomes sort of de facto better because that's what people know. That's what people go to and all of that sort of thing. And I feel like there's some of that with ENS, but I actually don't know enough about the competitors to know if they truly are offering basically as good or decentralized or whatever of a service as ENS.
Yeah, I put out a tweet
Unstoppable
last night.
domains, I think, is the big one.
That sounds familiar. I think yeah, there's definitely a few, and I put out a tweet last night asking if anyone knows who owns Zen.eth, and if you at least one person replied with another option,
I saw
and
this, and that's what kind of got this in my
yeah,
brain. I saw people kind of saying, "Why not just do this one? It's only $100." I
mhm.
definitely, yeah,
So I think yeah, it's the from a technical perspective. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there are alternatives that allow you to do more or are more decentralized than ENS. And those are obviously good things, but I think the network effect is just the biggest thing, where just because something's better doesn't mean it's going to get mass adoption. And something I heard, I can't remember where, but like a few months ago was people were talking about like Discord competitors and like how, Discord sucks and is not Web3 native, and we need to build a Web3 Discord and people are building them. And that's true. But in order to like the biggest strength Discord has at this point is market share and adoption and
yet the people are there. A chat app that has nobody on it, it can be technically fantastic, but if there's nobody to chat with, it's not much of a chat app.
worthless. And so like the difficulty is how do you get people over from one to the other? And you can't just be like slightly better. You need to be like an order of magnitude better or two orders of magnitude better. You really need to have some massive incentive to get people over. And maybe that's where like things like tokens and airdrops and stuff might come into play, but it's really, really difficult to get people to move from Discord to a Discord competitor, just like it's going to be really, really difficult to get people to move from ENS and .eth to something else unless it's extraordinarily compelling and or takes many, many years.
Yeah, but the tokenization thing I think is a huge deal because
Mm.
it's just so much easier now, right, to reward early adopters and customers in a way that you only ever really were able to reward early investors
Mm-hmm.
in sort of the non-crypto times,
Yeah.
which is why, stuff like OpenSea or whatever, they have this huge lead and it's not easy to take it down. But because of the space it's in, it does seem like there's easier attack avenues and ways to at least in the short term attract people to other marketplaces. And then if those
Let's
marketplaces
go,
are
Blur. Let's go.
right, well, we were rooting for Looks Rare for a while too, right? And
This is true.
they put a dent in them, but they weren't able
Mm.
to take them down. But it was also a thing where, you know, as they were kind of gaining on them, we had sort of just this precipitous crash in NFT volumes,
Everything. Yeah.
which meant that, going to the second biggest marketplace became that much harder if you really wanted to sell. There's so much liquidity left. Then you kind of were forced back into the biggest
Mm.
pond, which is OpenSea. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see if things get very bullish and exciting and large again or whatever, how much they'll be able to keep people buying and selling within their ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, when I'm doing stuff, I'm trying a lot on archipelago.art and a little bit on Looks Rare, but also on OpenSea. I should probably be putting stuff on Looks Rare as well, but it does seem like for generative art specifically, there's some momentum on Archipelago to
Mm.
where it's worth at least listing or bidding on both sites,
Yeah.
OpenSea
I'm a
and
big fan of
Archipelago.
Archipelago.
Yeah, it's a good
I
site.
sold a Subscape recently, and I'm really bummed because I canceled my listing on Archipelago, but I also had it listed on OpenSea, and I just forgot that I had it listed in two places. And
What did it
yeah,
sell for? 12 or something?
14, but it's like rarish. Listed it when the floor was like 9 or something like that, and so I was like, well, this is well above floor, and I just didn't adjust it and didn't pay attention to it. Yada yada yada. Taylor's all his time. All right. Next question, I think, is mine. RB Stuff says, do you think the years of risk analysis and probabilities training with poker benefited you when starting to trade NFTs? Yes, I think it benefited me
Definitely.
tremendously. I imagine it benefited you and everyone who came from poker tremendously.
Yeah, I think bankroll management is sort of the specific subset of it that probably is the most impactful. It's in a lot of ways, though, I feel like more analogous to like sports betting than it is the poker in the way that the sort of the betting or the spreading of your funds is happening concurrently. In a way, with poker, you're using this amount of money to play this poker in this moment, and that's all the poker money risk, blah blah blah, that you're taking on at any one time. Other than like some stuff where you're doing some backing, right, buying pieces of other people, stuff like that. Whereas in sports betting, you can have some futures, and there is more of a sense in the individual decision making, sort of, that this is a risky one, so I'm going to do this percent of my bankroll. This one is, like the Kelly criterion is a thing specifically that is basically, listeners should look it up, but basically, if you have a bet that has a probability of winning of X, right, and you have a bankroll of Y and you have a payout of Z, the Kelly criterion is a formula that will tell you, for optimal bankroll growth, what percentage of your bankroll should you bet on this bet. And so that's sort of an interesting, very mathematical way to look at this sort of thing. And I think we definitely both applied that concept, even if not the exact equation, because the inputs are it's sort of a GIGO thing, right? Garbage in, garbage out. It's very hard to guess these things. And also, like a sports bet, you have a very defined payout, whereas NFTs change over time and all that good stuff. But the same concept applies, and we definitely used some of that last year a ton, and maybe some this year.
Yeah. I mean, all of that, and I think as well, sort of just the general mentality and nature of sort of thinking of money kind of as a tool, or like this thing that you use rather than like to make more money, and kind of like chips instead of. I think most people think of money, or whether it's cryptocurrency or like fiat, as like, oh, this could be rent money. This is what I need to pay food. This could be a holiday. This could be a car. This could be Siri just turned on. I don't know what I said, but I'm gonna close Siri. And as a poker player, you learn to sort of disassociate money from sort of your real day-to-day expenses, and maybe it comes back to bankroll management, but not just managing the bankroll, but having a separate bankroll, or like a separate mindset for funds that you're willing to be a lot more risk on than you are. Well, what am I saying? You know what I mean? Healthy disassociation to money, effectively.
The mindset to where you are using your money to make more money, and are sort of the part of the key thing to it, I think, is that, other people can kind of dabble in that just as easily as we start doing in it. But I think it's easier for us to have a lot of success doing it and not attribute it all to skill. And we can have a little bit of failure in it and not attribute it all to being a moron, right? We can have a little bit more of an emotional mid state, to where we know that you make a decision and then the results of that will be somewhat reflective of how good your decision is. But a lot of it will also be based on a bunch of factors that are outside of your control. So like, I think a lot of people maybe that didn't have that poker background were able to get into NFTs last year and be there for that same crazy bull ride that me and you were on, but have maybe a little bit too much confidence after some success, and then perhaps blew it all, basically, by continuing to put it all in something and thinking that they were always correctly identifying these things, whereas it was not quite as much a skill-based thing. So, you take all these great results from your Fidenzas or your Bored Apes, and then all of a sudden you put them into some project that rugs or plummets in price, and that's devastating. Whereas us, we might put some of the money that we had put in from that into these kind of newer things, because the Kelly criterion told us you only want to put X percentage of your bankroll into something that's this risky or whatever. Next question comes from SI Sensei. They said, I find Discord overwhelming and feel lost in the endless stream of messages. If someone wants to genuinely contribute, how would you go about it? I would say, to me, the easiest thing is find a place in Discord that you like as your sort of home base, right? Also leave some of the servers you're in, right? That we're all in more right. We're all in servers we don't need to be. But for, me personally, hanging out in Block Talk and Art Blocks, and then the Two Bored Apes channel in Zen Academy are the two places that you'll find me the most. And if I just kind of go, these are sort of the community places where I'm going to spend some time in, just seeing what people are saying and participating in the community. It's not as overwhelming as going, I need to keep up with all this stuff, because I don't need to keep up with all of it, right? My main thing would be kind of find a place that you like there and be okay, sort of keeping tabs on what's happening there, and realize that you don't need to keep up with all of this other stuff necessarily.
Yeah, no, I would say exactly the same. It doesn't even have to be one server. It's like you could find one channel within one server, like you have with the Two Bored Apes channel, or like the Block Talk channel and the Uplock server. And you can actually do things in Discord, like with notifications and muting channels, muting servers, muting categories, to basically eliminate a lot of the noise where you won't even get notifications, and you'll only see something when like someone posts in that specific channel. And that's a really good way to have a more calm and less overwhelming approach to Discord. But the other thing I would say is like you don't need Discord either. It's like there are other ways to be part of communities and to contribute and to get value. And it could be like if you much prefer like audio conversations, then there's a lot of Twitter spaces, and there are a lot of regular Twitter spaces. So, you can join the same Twitter space at the same time each week and like be around the same people and take part in that conversation. And you're sort of a contributing member and an active participant in a community in a way that's not, you don't need to scroll up and if you miss Discord for 3 days, there's not 1,000 messages that you have to sort of catch up on or feel like you have to catch up on or overwhelmed by. It's just like, all right, each week, I'm going to pop into this Twitter space for an hour. Maybe I'll talk, maybe I won't. I'm going to be just, part of this group. And maybe then there's all sorts of other options as well to be part of, conversations and communities outside of Discord. So I think
that's a good
as
point.
time goes on,
you don't need, you can contribute without being on Discord for sure.
Yeah.
So that's also an option.
As time goes on, I think more people are realizing, especially during the bear market, people are just getting sick and fed up at Discord. They just can't check it, and engagement's down, and life goes on. It's not it's not the end of the world. People will find ways to exist without Discord for sure. All right. Meta Big Les says, what phrase do you think will replace NFT in the future? We sort of touched on this before, and we're seeing things like digital collectible, digital avatar, digital asset. As you mentioned, the problem with digital collectible or avatar is that not all NFTs are one of those categories. I think digital asset is pretty good. It kind of covers, I think, virtually everything that an NFT covers.
But the problem with that, I would say, is that it also covers the fungible tokens, right? Because a Bitcoin is a digital asset.
Yeah. It's all...
I think the term will stick around, but people will come up with more terms to talk about the various categories of NFTs. And so, it will only be used in a more academic sense when you want to talk about the broad category of NFTs, and that all these various other things will have more specific terms, on-chain generative art, digital collectible, metaverse land, all these types of things, crypto identifier maybe, or something like that for ENS type domains, that kind of thing. So there will be a proliferation of lots of terms to describe little buckets of NFTs. But I think the term NFT, even though, people say, oh, it's got this bad, whatever, blah, 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 which it does to a lot of people. I think it's still not going away. When what you want to talk about is NFTs, right? But I think people will definitely use more specific terms when they have more specific things, because it is just such a broad category.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I saw a tweet by Punk6529 recently after the whole Reddit avatar thing, and I think he was saying something along the lines of like 2023 to 2026, everyone will be talking about digital avatars, collectibles, assets, this, that, and the other. And then after that, everyone will realize, oh, actually, we need to use the word NFT or the phrase NFT and to describe this, because there's no better term really. than what these are. And I
If-
kind of agree.
because when
Yeah.
he was saying specifically, like if you say digital collectible, then it's easy for people to just have a centralized entity backing it.
Mm,
And then if people see, okay, this is a digital collectible, but also these NFTs are being called digital collectibles, you can't actually see the difference unless you're being, a little bit more specific.
yeah. It's been an exciting few years in many instances, and I guess we'll see.
Right. Our last question comes from Hydroxide/Pacemaker. Have you read Virtual Society by Herman Narula, who is behind the tech for the Other Side Meta? And what did you think of it? I'll go first. No, I have not read it.
I will go second. No.
All right. Thanks for listening.
That has been episode, what is it, 59?
58, I thought. But
58.
something. It doesn't matter too much, right? Thanks for listening. We have to record another 2 episodes today, so
we're gonna do another Twitter Q&A right after this. Like, comment, subscribe, follow us, do good things, donate blood, don't litter, etc., etc.
I can't really see it. I donated a couple days ago and I had the little spot for the end. Okay, bye.
Bye.